What's up, everybody? Welcome to Beyond I Do. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed the episodes that we have done previously with part 1, part 2, separate occasions, right? There was a break in between with the Pinedos, but we had part 1, part 2, grandparents, older generation, which was great. Won't get into that again. But that original episode that we went into part 2, I had something else I wanted to bring up, and I think I might be the bad guy from time to time on here. You might be the bad guy on this video, but I'll
let you know.
Yeah, I found a video, and so there's this guy, and I'll premise it, and then we'll jump into it in just a second. But there's a guy that basically on TikTok does like satire advice to men. So he like makes jokes, so he always gives men advice about their wives. So like this is, for instance, not the video we're going to watch a different one. But for instance, he'll say, if your wife's ever upset, just ask her to calm down and it'll help her, it'll help her because it'll remind her to be calm, So he'll like say he does videos like that. So
but you do that.
It's clearly, I tell you to calm down?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
go take a break.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You married the wrong guy. You want me to sugarcoat. Plus, Ashlee doesn't. I try to explain to people all the time that when they get around us, like when Nancy really would come and be around us because she's my EA, and so she went on a trip with us, and I had to explain to her one time I'm not hard on Ashlee. She was a professional athlete, and so she responds to directness. When you cookie cut, she doesn't respond that way. Like maybe more women would, right? But you operated at a very high athletic level. So it's like you've always been coached, told that. And you and I have filmed curriculum in the past, and I've been like, Ashlee, just stop, just do it. And then all the guys are like, bro, talk to her different. And I'm like, no, I can't. So there's a guy, he basically does that. Yeah. And he did a video that it's funny, but I think it brings up a good conversation, through humor, though, of the value of the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. And you and I are always very conscious because over the years, like you and I mentoring people, like if their relationship was really toxic, if you and I weren't on top of it, that toxicity would blend into our marriage. And we'd be like, why all of a sudden are we arguing? Because like there's sometimes you and I have like helped couples, but it wasn't like, oh, we saw them every couple months. It was almost like, every couple days you and I were working with, a couple that was toxic. And the next thing you knew, like their bad habits, their bad traits were like seeping into our relationship because we weren't just being conscious. And so then that negativity started. And so we've over the years had to create, guardrails, not against people, but more so us mentally, what we accept as advice, what we accept to be around us regularly in terms of relationships. You and I have no problem ending relationships with people if they're not serious about their marriage or relationship. And so I just say all that to then get into the conversation. So first, well, obviously, just for a reminder, this is satire. The guy's not giving real advice, but he doesn't laugh. So he doesn't present it as, a joke. He makes it serious. But we know, like, when you watch his stuff, he's, merely joking. But there's always like a thread of like truth to what he's saying, that we all acknowledge and we know is there, right? So this time he gave some advice about your wife and her friends. Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
Never let your wife talk to another woman unless you're there to supervise. Women are not capable of solving problems. All they're doing is feeding into each other's delusions. Their goal is to sabotage each other's relationship. They'll be like, what? You were in an argument and your husband yelled at you? You need to leave him. Or they'll be like, what? Your husband didn't yell at you? That means he doesn't want to fight for you. You need to leave him. I'm telling you, women are not capable of solving any problems. Follow for more like this.
So
that was hilarious.
Yeah. Just because of coarseness, but. And there's other videos like that, and then there's another guy that does something similar, but what's funny though is like obviously he's joking and he calls it dad advice, but you know it's not good advice in that sense. But like you look at the comments, you see people a lot of commenting, like even women, like, oh man, it's so true. You know, like a lot of the friends I have, it's not leading each other in the best direction. It's either, you know, adding their own negativity to it, their own brokenness to it, their own hurt, their own thing, you know.
Well, you always say too that, not always, you've mentioned before that women love to be the same, like
relate to one another. They
yeah.
relate. Yeah, they encourage by saying, "Oh yeah, I had a bad day too." You had a bad day. I had a bad day too.
Well, you want to know what my husband did? My husband did the same thing, and this is how I reacted. So I think sometimes we do have to be mindful. I think the statement. There isn't a time wherever I feel like if I'm trying to find wisdom or advice, and this is just me, that I've had myself someone saying something super negative about you. That, like, let me just prime example. Years ago, I had brought up an issue, not an issue, but just a complaint I had about just our situation of you traveling a lot and me having the weight of Matthias, and this is what it looked like. And I was telling Nikki, mind you, Nikki's single, not married. She's one of my closest friends. And I was telling her, this is my issue. And I wanted her in that response to be like, yeah, that's not fair. You need to tell him he doesn't need to travel. His first ministry needs to be his family. He needs to sit down. He needs to stop doing what he's doing. But her response wasn't that. Her response was, and I was literally dumping everything of like a complaint that I could have. I'm tired. I'm this. I'm that. I'm this. I'm that. And we probably spent about 10 or 15 minutes. And after I was done having the conversation, she was like, "Okay, are you done?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I appreciate you telling me, and I'm here to listen. But unless if you did not have this conversation with your husband of the things that you desire from him or what you may be going through or what you may be feeling, I cannot help you."
Yeah.
Because she's like, "I'm not going to add more fuel to the fire, because if I add something negative, Ashlee, now you're just going to harbor that even more, and then it's going to grow you more distanced towards your husband."
Yeah.
And that's not what I want. I love both you and Adam, and you guys are a package deal. Although I am your closest friend, I still have to respect your husband, which I do. Because not only is he your husband, but then we have you're her pastor. And so she's like, I have to now separate, and that's kind of how we honestly talk. And I don't know if this is how you have to talk to your girlfriend, but what we do in our relationship with Nikki is she'll come at me and she'll start the sentence and she'll say, "I don't need Pastor Ashlee right now." And not to say that I'm taking a hat off or I'm not going to give wisdom. She's like, "I just need to vent, and I need it out, and I want to be done with it.
Yeah.
But don't feed into it.
Yeah.
I just need to vent about it, but I don't need you to put your 2 cents, because then it's going to make me more mad. Just hear me out and just say, I heard you."
Yeah.
And
Or
that
not
may
even
or may
Pastor
not.
Ashlee, Christian Ashlee could
Christian
be like,
Ashlee, yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes.
you're not being forgiving, and she's like, "I know I'm not. I'm telling you
you
right.
why
You know,
not?
like
But-
that's what I'm telling. I'm working through it. You know, like it's like, you know, it's like that's one of the Christian things that bugs me is like when you're acknowledging how you fell short, and then the person is trying to add on. Yeah, you're falling short. It's like, I know. That's why I'm talking about
That's
it
why
with
I
you.
said it.
You know, like
Thank you for not making. Thank you for making me feel worse about it.
Right. I'm aware.
I'm very much aware, and that's why I'm trying to process it. So sometimes I think we have to have the mindset of, what am I having this conversation for, and what do I want to get out of it? So a lot of times I feel like we as women, we go into a conversation and either we want to make ourselves feel better or we want to make ourselves feel worse. It's one or the other, or we're just neutral. So majority of the times when I'm having conversations, even about our marriage or about the kids, I'm hopeful that I'm finding wisdom every time I'm having a question or a concern or a complaint about something. I'm telling you that, yes, I failed in this area. How do I be better?
Yeah.
I don't want you to tell me, man, that person sucks, and drag them under the mud. Give me a solution. Do you have a solution to my complaint? Do you have a solution? I'm not coming here to just trauma dump or complaint dump on you. I'm here because I want resolution, because I'm well enough to look in the mirror and say, Ashlee, you are wrong. And so that's one, going back to the way that you do talk to me is how I've been brought up. And someone would be like, well, is that trauma? No, that's how I respond. Because there's an expectation that someone who I know loves me wants me to be better. So Adam doesn't talk to me in a baby like, oh my gosh, my sweet honey bunny, I just, that really wasn't so nice, Ashlee. And then I'm like, oh, he said that really nice, then I'm really not that much in trouble. No, if he was like, that really wasn't nice. And it's not that like I'm under him and he's my dad and he's talking down to me. He has an expectation of how he views me and that I need to be better. So does that make sense? Yeah. So for me, that's
well, we have an accountability to each other. It's
very
not,
much.
It's not. I mean, well, biblically, there's submission, but on top of that, there's you and I are both believers, so
Right.
so we encourage each other to walk like Christ, talk like Christ, live like Christ. So there are times that you're going to fall short. There's going to times I'm going to fall short. You're going to probably, because you're a woman and you, in our relationship, and most women's, like, you talk more. So like, you're probably going to fall short with your words, and I'm even though we're on this podcast and I talk a lot in real life, I don't talk a lot. Very limited in conversation.
Because there's more accounts on my end where I'm always like, hey, this is what I said. And I said, this is what I said. I'm mad, blah, 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 blah. And his immediate response is, you need to go apologize. Although I hear what you did, I know that you were offended, but what you still are accountable to what you said. You're not accountable to what they said. I don't care what they said. You may or may not get an apology. You may or may not get what you're requiring. But if you feel if I see that you offended somebody, or I think that the way that you approach me needs an apology, I'm gonna hold you to it. And so as a wife, I genuinely appreciate that, because that shows, obviously, maturity, but it also shows that I have a godly man who wants me to be better and trusts me to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And to say, man, they don't just walk the walk, they talk the talk, like they do both.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think, specifically in our marriage, like, we've been together 12 years this year, married 10 years. So, at the beginning of our marriage, we were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, not just in marriage, but in like friendships. And we were like, oh, we'll hang out with anyone, and we'll get close with anyone, and we'll share our life with anyone. And then, 10 years down the line in marriage, it's, our circle of who we trust to share with what we're going through or going on, because just quite frankly, hurt people. The church is imperfect, and Christians are imperfect. And so we've trusted people over the years with what we're going through, how we feel, what you and I are going through, how maybe I feel, I've been in a transition with my dad for many years. Maybe I was frustrated about something. Shared it with people that I thought I was close with, and then down the line it gets used against me. Someone tells someone, Adam told me something, or Adam and Ashlee, they fight. They're not perfect. It's like, well, yeah, no duh. But it's like they're offering quote unquote insider information and all that kind of stuff like that, and that's not even because we have a platform. I mean, people who don't have a platform still feel like people break their trust all the time, and so you and I. You and I are very selective about like who we share our burdens with. And for me, it's pretty set. And for you too, it's like, and I get people that about all the time people come to me and they tell me, if you ever just need someone to talk to, to me, that's just like, unfortunately, and it could be right, wrong, or different. It's a red flag to me. When someone tells me, you can trust me. No, here's how someone knows they can trust you, is when they offer something that is weighty on them and it doesn't go anywhere. It's through trial and error. It's not through words. You could come to me with anything. It's like a parent that tells their child, you could come to me with anything. And then they go, yeah, I had my first sip of alcohol last night. What? Go to your room right now. You just told them they can trust you with anything. They tried it. They trialed it. They tested it. Here's what I did. You completely just went off the rail. So then the child makes a mental note. They say that, but they don't mean that, you know? And so, and I'm not saying you don't discipline it, but there's an approach to it. And so in the same way, when somebody says, you know, you could tell me anything, right away, normally I go, no, I don't know that I could tell you anything because I haven't told you anything yet. I don't know if it's a trust space. I don't know what. And then when you feel that trust is there, then you offer, you know, hey, this is what me and Ashlee are going through. And then, you know, depending how that person responds will depend on whether you could continue to open up to them, you know, and you and I have just learned over the years that, you know, less is more, and the less in terms of the value of relationships we have, like in terms of Nikki, like giving great advice. And over the years, it's like, even for me, I'm like, Nikki may not be married and Nikki may not be a season where she has children, but I don't need her to have quote unquote that experience in order to give my wife good sound wisdom or even be there for you. I need someone that is mature enough that can encourage you not only to be more like Christ, but to love your husband. So for her to be like, hey, love that you're sharing it with me. Next time, share it with me after you've shared it with your husband. You know, like, and it's like, wow, that's great advice. And then me as a husband, I hear that and I go, man, I love when my wife spends time with Nikki because I know that her friend is trying to make her better, not trying to make her worse. Not Ashlee come home and be like, you know, I was feeling X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And you're like, well, I brought it up to Nikki and she agrees. And then I'm going to be like, well, Nikki, what do you mean? You know, I'm not a fan of you hanging out when I can't control you, but I'm like, I could be like, why? I don't want you hanging out with Nikki. She always got something negative to say about it. So now all of a sudden, you know, Nikki's coming around. I roll my eyes. You know, you and I, we counsel a lot of couples and we always hear, you know, couples, they're not friends of their spouse's friends and this and that because they've encouraged them, you know, to do stupid things or say stupid things or whatever. And they say, well, you know, I talked to Joe and he told me his marriage was going in this direction. And so I just think that, you know, he thinks that we're headed in the same way. And it's like, you know, and so there, you know, there's all this bad negative advice that, you know, it's one thing just to say, well, hey, this is what I experienced. It's another thing to be like, well, because I experienced it, you're going to experience it. And also secretly want someone to experience hell with you, which a lot of people are made. That's how they act. They don't like when a marriage is in trouble. A lot of marriages don't want to be around healthy marriages because it continues to show them how, in their head, how far away a healthy marriage is. They actually want to be around other crappy marriages so that they go, well, we're not that bad. And it's like, well, no, that's not good, you know?
But, and then we do have some friends too, though, that I would say that they're very honest within their marriage and they're very they don't hide anything. So if we're hanging out with them, they're going to share and show who they are. So one thing that for us, though, with them, because we do come across as we have it all together, even though we're really close with them, they love when we are normal.
Yeah, when we talk about like our arguments and stuff like that.
And so that in that way is it's all dependent. You have to know the relationships and the friendship and the dynamic of understanding when you can be healthy with disagreements or arguments that does encourage another couple to say, okay, we are normal as well. Because you can't have this high horse of like, oh, we're never that couple who are like, well, we're perfect, so you guys should model after us. We've never done that. I haven't always gone into conversation where I'm like, even if somebody.
Well, you and I have never, because I've met, you know, quote unquote seasoned believers like this. We're like, they may not mean this, but they almost make it sound like we've attained knowledge on how to have a healthy marriage. And then they go, you know, we feel called to pour our marriage into other marriages. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But they do it in a sense of like, they almost make it as this perceived sense of like, not that like, oh, we want to do it through transparency. It's more so of a like, hey, we feel like we figured this thing out. And we feel that, you know, we can help people model after our marriage. And it's like, you and I have never had a conversation that was like, hey, we have marriage and friendship figured out. It was more so like we've done a lot of stuff that's wrong. We have some good rhythms and routines that we think can help people.
Yeah.
But like, please don't model your marriage after our marriage, because we're very different people from you, and vice versa. And what may work for me, I just said what works for Adam and Ashlee is me saying, Ashlee, oh shush, go say sorry. You know, in another marriage, that may break the wife. She may have to stay with her parents for a week if her husband, talk to her like that. So like every marriage is very different. And so I would never, and we always tell this joke how like, I was giving advice to a premarital young man, and he was dealing with, finding his voice in the relationship. And so one of the talks I gave him was like, not like a misogynistic way, but it's like, hey, bro, you're going to be the head. You're the alpha of the family. You're the leader of the family. So as the leader, like when you're uncomfortable about something, like you need to speak up, or else you're going to just bottle this. And men, we lead. And so when we lead, we're a voice, and we're this. And so I'm just like encouraging him. And the wife, they're married now. The wife, she stops me one Sunday and she says, "Hey, can I just ask you a question that I don't think I'm clear on?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can ask me." And she goes, "Did you tell so and so, my fiance, to tell me he's the alpha of the marriage?" And I go, hold on, you're gonna have to tell me how this was presented. And then she goes, yeah, he's like, we were arguing and he said like, no, you have to listen to me. I'm the alpha. Pastor Adam told me I'm the alpha of the marriage. And I go, oh no, that's not how I know how it can sound. I get it. I see it now. And I go, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant, I did assert that, he's the leader. He's the alpha of the marriage, like the lion, And I go, but it was more so of like to lead you, to care for you and listen to you, but also, speak up if he's uncomfortable, but like not to tell you he's in charge. Anyone who has to tell someone they're in charge, even in a workplace, if someone has to say, well, I'm your manager, you've already lost the battle. You've lost respect. Because leadership is not exemplifying and telling people rank. It's leading people that they're wanting to follow you because of the authority that's been given to you, but it's not brandished over people. And so I explained that to her, and she was like, okay, all right, I'm more clear on it. And I go, but I'm going to have to go have a talk with him. So then I call him, and I'm like, you dummy, that's not what I did. But then also, I over the years counseling, I've learned to be like overly clear, with advice, to say, hey, and I always say now, like, this is how I would do it. This is how I would talk about it with Ashlee. But your marriage is very different, and your relationship is very different. So, get the heart of what I'm saying, but you're going to have to I don't know your spouse. And some people, we know them so well that I may say, hey, this is how I think. Right. Jermaine, Jasmine, whatever, Gabriel, Cynthia, I know them enough that they receive this way. But in just normal advice, when I've never met someone's spouse or something, it's more so of hey, get the heart of this. Right. But please do not. This is how I talk to Ashlee. Yeah. Like, do not go home and talk like this, and vice versa. This is how Ashlee talks to me. We're not saying you got to do it this way. But a lot of people, when they give advice, they're like, well, you need to go to him, or you need to go to her, and you need to say it like this. A lot of times that's bad advice, because if they don't know your communication style in your marriage, they're not giving good advice per the circumstance. Just because they got fruit from it, doesn't mean that you're going to have fruit. So it's being very cautious about when you give advice and when you get advice, being very aware that, sit on that advice first. Like, don't just go home and run the play. No. And we've seen a lot of people before. They're like, oh yeah, they just run the play. They're like, oh, I was told by so-and-so to tell my husband blank, or told so-and-so to tell my wife blank, and it didn't go well. Why do you think it didn't go well? And I'll be like, well, because maybe your wife's different, right? Or maybe your husband, a lot of times we'll talk with, one of my first questions with not a young man, a man that I'm counseling, and counseling 60-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds, if it's marriage-based, one of my first questions is always, tell me a little bit about your relationship with your father. That's going to tell me a lot. It's going to tell me how to approach you in the conversation. Mm-hmm. It's going to approach, and then when they tell me, I tell, what's your, okay, well, they would say, father was never in my life. How does that make you feel? And I'll see them get angry. Mm-hmm. I'll see them cry. I've seen, grandfathers cry talking about their dad who was never there, right? And so then right away, I'm like, okay, like I know what he might have issues with, and raised by his mom. Wife comes in, mom's always told him what to do. Mom was disciplinarian and leader and mother, blah, blah, blah. So, he comes in the marriage. Wife gets to a point where she's like, I want you to lead. Hey, he's never seen it before. Mm-hmm. His mom led him.
Right.
So he's thinking you're going to lead him because mom did that.
Right.
Then you're fed up with it because then maybe you had a dad in your life and you had male leadership. And then now you're like, why my husband's not that? He's weak. And it's like, well, my friend told me that's a weak man, whatever, or I heard a podcast. It's like, he didn't have a father.
Right.
He's 55 years old. I get that, but he did. That's not an excuse. I mean, we can work on it, but at the same time, like we're all starting the race at different times.
Right.
Some people are starting the race at 100 meters. Some people are starting the race at 0.
Yeah.
Some people are, a man who had a very active dad who was very involved. And I'm starting the race in terms of fatherhood and manhood and a little bit ahead from the guy who had never been around a man before. And now all of a sudden he's dad, father, grandfather. Yeah. It's no excuse for him to, whatever, but it should give a person some grace to be like, well, I'm getting advice from someone who doesn't even know my spouse's circumstance. Right. And it's not even necessarily wouldn't be always their business to know, all that stuff. It's your job to filter that stuff and be like, okay, I got to really, I chose to marry this person. I got to understand them first. I got to have some grace,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Another thing to the video as well is being, we as husband and wife should always be mindful of what we say to others in any circumstance or setting. If you are allowing the enemy in your marriage with what you speak towards your marriage negatively. So I think for us as couples, married couples, be mindful of how your tongue is going and flowing. Mm-hmm. Be mindful that you are now sowing seeds of negativity, of strife, of anger, of animosity, of resentment when you speak ill towards your husband, especially if you're not going to someone who wants fruit in your marriage. Yeah. Because all they're going to do is just literally dry that seed that you sown out, and nothing, no water, no nothing fruitful is coming from that seed. It is going to die, and then you're going to just be more angry, more upset, and more resentment towards your husband. And especially like the thoughts that are given, if they're coming back with more negative thoughts and you're going to a girlfriend and she's just saying, yeah, and just wait until he does this, just wait until he does that. Now you're not only sharing what you shared about your husband with this person has no wisdom, giving no guidance, giving no love or care. They're just now instilling new fears, new questions, new concerns that you had never even thought of prior to you even going to that person. Yeah. So be careful on who you share your spouse with, to be honest. If you genuinely love your husband, you should always have, or your wife, in the back of your mind, how do I still respect them even though I'm angry? Yeah. And it's all in what you say. I know you've told me that even in our marriage, is because I'm quick to just respond, and what I said may be inaccurate, or the way that I said it wasn't clear. So I can't, you're like, I can't protect you in those areas where you didn't think before you spoke.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So for me, I know that if something is said, or if I'm going to say something, make sure I said what I said is accurate. accurate or that I said it was clear. So prime example, talking to Nikki once again, and I made a statement to her and she goes, well, you're lying in that statement. You said always. Mm-hmm. You said always. I remember last week you told me the same thing. And I was like, well, dang, you're right. And it had nothing to do with you. It was just within ministry. And so I was just like, well, I can't really be frustrated because I've done it before. And I use the word always or never. And she's like, well, you can't use it. And I was like, okay, now let me retract and re-say what I wanted to say and say it right. And she was like, I would have received it better if you said it that way. And then I could have given you clarity. I could give you wisdom. But if you're saying always or never with somebody that wants you to win, be careful on how you speak.
Yeah.
Just because I know that I never want to go in a room, like I've said before, I never want to go into a room where I've spoken ill of you and I'm walking next to you in the next moment. And like, oh, so what happened? I thought he was a dog. I thought he was lazy. I thought he was ungrateful. I thought he was unworthy. I thought he was not being a leader. Yeah. But yet you arm in arm and now you're all in San Diego and he's the love of your life. Mm-hmm. Where we've had many of those times where we've gone to our accountability. Then I've gone to Erica and I'm like, he get on my nerves. Or we were even doing it together where we were just like, bro, we're having a tough season, da-da-da-da. And then the next 2 days later is like, he's the love of my life. And they send it to us and they're laughing at us. Because they're like, you guys just were upset with each other. Are you guys fully healed and restored? Not to say that you can't love your spouse, but don't give and show out to social media that you guys are this perfect couple when we know deep down that you guys have some things to work on.
Yeah.
The facade of like
social media, facade and the moment that it's like, it's the, we had one good day, so we're doing better.
Right.
And it's like, no, like,
because that's not fair to the accountability and the friend that you told. Yeah. Because they're looking at you like, hey, this is a process. We're going to walk through this with you guys. We're going to encourage you guys. We're going to uplift you guys. And then the next day y'all are acting all good and you're like, but y'all was crying on my floor 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Not to say that we don't want you to win. We're walking through this with you, but give it some time because now we feel like we're just exhausted. You're feeling like we're winning. And it's like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but you're not there yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we've talked with couples before is the moment we'll walk away from, like kind of like an accountable friendship where you could tell us what you're going through and we're here for you and we want to help you out is the moment you and I feel like we care more about their relationship than they do.
Yes.
And so the moment that happens, I go like, all right, like I'm out, like I'm praying for you guys, but I'm not always here for you.
Right.
Because when you tell me what you're going through, I committed to prayer. I ask the Lord for wisdom. I pray for you guys. So for what you guys is a 30-minute to an hour conversation with us, you're like, oh, it's over. He ran out. I threw the ring out on the patio. We talked to Adam and Ashlee, Tuesday. They're like, oh, we're all good. And we're like, hey, did you address it? Oh, no. We're going to address it. We're going to talk. And then I'm like, we gave you an hour. When we hung up the next morning, I was praying for you guys. Past couple of days, I've been thinking about your situation, thinking of how I could continue to pray, what you could. And I talked to you and you go, oh, yeah, no, that was a bad night. We had too much wine, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, then leave me alone. Leave me, like, don't. And we have.
Me.
There's been times we had to be like, hey, we're friends. Like, we're cool. Like, we're friends. But, like, don't make us your go-to people, right? Because we put too much energy into wanting you to win, and if you're not going to do that, because we have always committed that, couples we don't want to pull people away. We don't give advice that makes married couples further, And there's times we've had to give advice of extremes, like, hey, you guys may need to separate or whatever. And so there's obviously wisdom sometimes in those things, but most of the time it's like, hey, we're here because we want your marriage to win, not just to you to win. And like when I do weddings, a lot of times one of the first things I do is I talk to the audience and I say, hey, you guys are here because these two people really love you guys and your family and your friends. And, you know, there's thousands of people that potentially they could have invited to be at this wedding, but the 100 of you were the ones that they chose. And so before we get started, and then I have this thing, like, I need you guys to first, before they make a commitment, you need to make a commitment that you're not here for them individually, you're here for them together. You didn't come to see one person, you came to see two people become one. So by you sitting here, you are agreeing that in the future, you are committed to encourage their marriage, not discourage their marriage. Or else don't show up, get up and leave, you know,
Right.
like, and so then I do this small commitment. You're here because you're blah, 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 blah. Can you guys say we do? And then they say we do. And I go, okay, you know, that's a lot of talking. You got to do the whole thing. And then they kind of laugh and then we move on. But I think that's really important for people to acknowledge, like, if I love somebody and they're two became one and they're married, my role is not just to hear, you know, you take my brother Nathan, for instance, my job isn't to have Nathan's best.
Yeah.
It's to have the best in their marriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and I go in that with that in mind, so that when he's talking, it's not like, oh, I just got my boys back.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, I have their back. And then it's like, if Sanaz isn't present to speak for herself, it's my job as Nathan's friend to be also his critical analysis at the same time, not just his choir or his amen or his yes man of like, oh yeah, bro. And I'm assuming that, well, Sanaz got her friends that are encouraging her. No, it's like on both sides, there's an expectation that it's like, you know, how many times has Nathan or I been like, yeah, bro, you're a jerk, get over yourself, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's good friendship.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's other times it's like, yeah, man, I'm not cool with that. I'll talk with Ashlee if we all got to talk, because I don't think Ashlee would be in agreement with that, you know, for Sanaz or vice versa. All three of you have talked to me, Adam, we really, you know, we really want you to make this effort towards Ashlee. And I'm like, okay, like that's the friendships I want, because I don't want the confidence to know that I can go to my friends and all they're going to do is be like, yeah, man, your wife sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, that eventually at some point I'm going to go, well, maybe I just need a better wife. You know, like maybe my problems will go away with a better wife. And anyone who's been in any form of around people knows that a lot of times a new marriage ain't the fix.
Right.
Because you still you're going to the next marriage.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, so,
yeah. I think, you know, it leads me to the conversation too for single people who are dating and looking for that right person. If you find yourself going and complaining about the person you're dating more than you're uplifting or actually having a good time with them, get out. Don't stay just for the sheer fact that you're with somebody in a relationship, because if you're constantly complaining about this individual prior to you even getting married, what do you think marriage is going to be? You're just going to be complaining about them more. I don't know if I've ever shared it. It was hard. I think we were dating at the time. One of my girlfriends at the time, known for years, was getting married. And she was marrying a guy I could not stand. And I just knew how he was treating her, very disrespectful. She would come and complain slightly because she knew that I was just like, yeah, be done. Be done. And she got married and I was invited to the wedding and I did not go. I did not go. We were dating at the time and I felt awful as a friend for not going. But I knew my friend deserved better and I knew it wasn't going to get better after them getting married. And unfortunately, they did end up getting a
They ended up getting divorced.
They ended up getting a divorce.
But it wasn't like just like, oh, he's selfish. It was like, it's like really,
it was really
like,
deep
like
things.
Really bad.
So
it
was one of those, though, as a friend.
Like he and I almost got in a fight once. And because I paid for the bill at our dinner. And he felt like I was dishonoring him. And I was like, bro, that's silly. I just trying to impress the girl I'm dating. I don't care about y'all.
Literally. Literally.
Yeah. We got mad and then they got mad. You know, their in their relationship they got in a huge fight and he's like, don't ever bring,
Don't ever let him do that again.
And I was like, oh shoot, we was at Chili's. It was triple
Literally
dippers.
literally Chili's.
I went at Fleming's. It was like,
Montclair.
It's like the bill was like $45.
Yes.
I was just trying to be polite.
He was.
But it was.
But those were things that I was just like, girl, that's not okay. Like there are things that you have.
It's like a lot of trauma he was working through that just was not, fair.
Wasn't. And so there are things too where if you see somebody that's dating, don't ignore it. And if you don't support it, tell them you don't support it. Because don't sit there fake and then snicker and talk behind their back when they get married and be like, well,
and then be at the wedding and be like, hey, let's all have a bet. How long y'all think this is going to last? And like for that person, they wouldn't even know that you didn't have faith in the relationship.
That part.
Yeah.
And that's not fair. I wouldn't consider you a friend at that point. So me and her are still, we're not, obviously just time goes on and they live further, but they come to church every chance that they get. Candace, she's now remarried, has a beautiful family, beautiful kids. But it's one of those things that was hard. It was hard to be a truthful friend in that because you want your friends to win. And if
you want
they're
her to be happy and she's saying, I think I'm going to be happy. And you're like, I'm on the outside. I could kind of see a different perspective of this relationship that you don't see, right? It's like when I was in a relationship with someone at church, and then I got out of it, and Nathan and all my close friends were like, "Yeah, bro,
we couldn't wait."
Yeah, and I'm like, "Well, I mean, tell me, like,
be like, I thought you were my friend.
I listen to you, but at least tell me, like." At least let me know that when y'all are hanging out when I'm not around, you're making bets about how long this thing lasts.
And not only that, if it would have lasted, would you guys have even hung out with us at that point? Or would you know?
And then we did the flip with Heron. Heron was dating someone before he married Cass, and I said, hey, as long as you're dating her, don't come around.
Yeah.
We just weren't fans of that relationship. And so for like 9 months, Heron never got invited to nothing. Because we was like, hey, you're dating someone that as a group we know is not healthy for you.
100%.
And I mean, you call like our friend, and we talked about this on podcast, like our friendships are very extreme. They're high integrity, high character, high accountability. We all mess up. We're all failures, but we high grace, but it's very like you live up to your word. You tell your wife you're going to do something, you do it. And we hold each other accountable because we all want to be healthy, and so I get it. That's extreme for a lot of people to be like, dang, yeah, man, you did that to Harry? Like, yes. Because that's what I wanted when I was in that other relationship that everybody was clowning on. So like we did it to him. And eventually, you know what? He woke up and he thought, if I marry this girl, my best friends won't even hang out, they definitely not gonna go to the wedding. I got really think, and it was one time we were kind of doing it privately, not including him. And then finally one day, like if you ever ask him, hey, why did that relationship end? And we talked about it before. He said, my nickname's Rabbi. He'll say, well, Rabbi just pulled me aside and said, hey, have you ever noticed past couple months we haven't included you in X, Y, and Z that involved couples and blah, blah. Like, I go, because we're not rocking with this relationship, and here's why, and blah, blah. And he said, it was after that conversation, next day he went to her and was like, hey, my community doesn't improve. We're going to have to end this. And I agree. And he's like, I agree. I see it myself.
And mind you, there's context behind it too. So it wasn't just like, oh, we saw her and didn't like her. There was like,
there's unhealthy. And it was like just a sweet person. It was not good for him, and different character, different, just different convictions, different, all that stuff. But it was like, you get in a relationship, they're like, oh, like great body. They're cute. They're pretty. We have fun, the kisses are nice and all that garbage. And so that blinds us, right? All the stuff that blinds us. And that's what he was blinded by, just it's fun and it's something to do. And all my friends are married now. Like what the heck? And it's all that. And then it was like, hey, bro, I know on the outside, it just looks like you just bored. You're looking for someone, but we don't think it's it. And here's why, just sweet person, but had a lot like history of like gossip and arguing with people and just stuff that wasn't good character stuff that we just thought that he at the time was, and everybody grows, everybody's at different seasons. So for him, we just felt like he was he needed to, look for someone that was more equally yoked with him in that direction. But we told him, and then he pivoted and he was immediately like, I see it. I agree. He sobered up.
He didn't get mad.
No,
he didn't cut you guys off. He
no,
didn't say anything
no.
negative. He wasn't offended. He was like, how could they? How dare they? I'm in love.
Yeah. And I had to risk that. Like, okay, by the time I tell my boy, he may be super mad at me. He may just, I call it the Romeo and Juliet syndrome. I see, dating people do it all the time where everyone in their community doesn't think it's healthy. So they convince themselves they're Romeo and Juliet, and sure enough, somebody dies, it's like, that's how it ends, so, but that's what it is. It's people look at these, I go, oh, it's Romeo and Juliet. So they've convinced themselves that mom and dad are in agreement, their friends aren't in agreement, and it's love, but really, sometimes it can be, but most of the time it's an infatuation. It's not love, it's lust, and it blinds you. And so just even being honest in friendships in the dating phase with this is critical. And your friends may only have one perspective, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to listen, do what they say.
Right.
But it is I always tell people when they're dating, I always say, okay, you're in this relationship with this person. If things end tomorrow, who are the first two people you call? And because you're going to be brokenhearted, you're just going to be crushed. Who are the two people you're going to call? And then they'll tell me. Sometimes it's dad, mom. Sometimes my sister. Sometimes it's my pastor. Sometimes my best friend. And then whoever they say those first two is, I say, then their voice in this season should be the loudest. Their opinion of what they think about the person that you're dating. And what they think about you moving forward. If you're a young man, moving forward married. If you're a young woman, responding if he ends up being. Those two people should have the highest influence in your next steps. Yeah. So I go, what do those two people think about your relationship? Oh, they hate it. Okay, I don't know what to tell you, but don't call them when it goes. If they're the ones that you call when it goes wrong, and they're not the ones that you'll listen to right now, then I'll tell you this. I could probably tell you how this story ends. I'll probably tell you how that story ends. Either you're going to marry them and you're going to lose those relationships, or you're going to go through a lot of hurt. Yeah. And then you're going to try those relationships, and then they're either, by time it gets, they're going to have cut you off because they're so tired of the rigmarole of you guys arguing and not, you're in love, you're not in love, and marriage is a different responsibility, but in the dating phase, so then eventually they just go, hey, leave me alone. And then you guys break up, you call, you try to get that relationship back. Sometimes you do, but a lot of times you don't. And then you go, oh, what was I thinking? I was so infatuated with this person, and I wasn't sober-minded at all from anyone. And so between which we've talked about on the podcast before talking about dating, the 30-day rule, before you make a big decision of engagement or anything, take 30-day fast from each other. Just make sure that your decision-making is sober and you're not infatuated with each other, and it's not just lust, and it's something that you genuinely allow God to speak to you during silent time. Take 30-day break before you make a big decision. The other one is the two people thing. Who are the two who, if this went bad tomorrow, who's the first two people you call? Right now in this season, those should be the biggest voices on who you're dating then. Absolutely. Because we often see it's the opposite. They say, "Oh, I'd call these people," but they don't think this relationship is healthy. It's always like, well, you should listen to it.
Either listen to it or stop talking so much and tell everybody your business.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like we just talk too, like you said, we as women love to talk. We love to share. We love the me too. I did this. We did that. And sometimes it's really, which I've been asking the Holy Spirit, bite my tongue. Before I speak, bite my tongue. Is this something that I believe this person is going to have fruit from it or hold it? Or am I just talking to talk? Talking to be heard, talking to be seen? And sometimes I feel like when we do the talk to be heard, talk to be seen, that's when we get ourselves in most trouble. Because we don't realize that we're sharing something that other person isn't mature enough to hold on to or mature enough to give wisdom in.
Yeah.
So that has been a prayer of mine lately, as far as God, speak, or allow me to speak when it's my time to speak.
Yeah.
And don't overspeak or overshare, and be mindful. Because the last thing I want to do is, 1, dishonor or disrespect my husband. 2, come back to my family. 3, then come back to my marriage. and not in those orders, but like come back to me as a wife, me as a mother, me as a friend. Because sometimes when you hear someone that's overly sharing or trauma dumping, you're just sitting back and you're like, oh my gosh. When I hear somebody do it, what I do is I reflect and be like, girl, do you talk that much? Are you saying all that stuff?
Yeah.
Do you do that? That's how I receive it, because in that moment, I'm mature enough to understand what's happening, but the person sharing with me doesn't realize how much they're throwing out there and realizing these are things that I should not be hearing right now. But I'm mature enough to know that this isn't going to leave here, because there's certain things that you're going through, that you're hurting, you're broken, you need restoration or healing. And I'm going to leave it there. But I'm mature enough to know that. There's some other people will take it, put it in their back pocket and be like, oh, I can't wait to share this with somebody. Oh, I can't wait to say how worse they have it than I have it. Or dump it right back on them. Well, oh, you too? Well, I did this, I did that. And so sometimes it's having the maturity to know when to speak and when not to speak, what to say and what not to say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where now, obviously you being in the spaces and places that you've been in, and I've had the equal opportunity to go to these conferences or to even go to these gatherings, and just hearing other women's stories. There are times where I was just like, oh, thank you for sharing. But I'm like, dang, and obviously they're sharing because they probably feel like they're in a safe place or space. But sometimes I'm also too, where I'm like, Holy Spirit, make sure whatever I say, especially because if I don't know them personally, that I'm protecting my husband, because that is my end goal at everything that I do, anything that I do. Anybody asks, what is and I know I can't do it all the time. They're like, what is the one thing that keeps you, or what is the one thing you desire to always do? And it's protect my husband any way I can. In my words, in my actions, in my thoughts, in the way that I operate, the way that I communicate.
Yeah.
How am I protecting him? Because anytime, like I've said before, anytime I walk in a room, I am a representation of my husband. I am his rib. I am what holds not only him together, but us together as far as protecting him. A woman put it so beautifully. I don't know if I sent it to you, but she said, she was talking about how we as women were created not an organ, not a limb, but we were created as ribs. And she put in sorry, your father. He's a mess.
Diego?
Yes.
I got issues with him.
Literally.
Yeah.
They both have
Speaking
issues.
of which,
he's a mess.
Got some problems with him.
He's a mess. But anyways, so what she had said was so beautiful, and I took it and I ran with it. She had said that we were created from a man's rib, because the rib protects all the organs. And so as being the rib, we are to be protectant of our husband, of his heart, of the way that it functions, of the way that it operates, that if we as the rib start to loose ourselves from it, then things can get in and affect the organs within in the body. So she took that and I said, oh, I'm your rib. I'm going to protect you. It was great.
That's great. It's very good. And ribs are also very delicious. So you could also make an argument that you need to cook more as well for us.
Oh. You're a dumb.
We've been married 10 years. She's maybe cooked 15 times. So one time a year almost is what it is.
Yesterday he made us burgers. They were so delicious. And I went outside. He's like, you're going to go work out? I was like, no, I'm going to go lay in the grass. And so then all of a sudden I'm just laying there and I'm like, that smells so good.
And then I'm like, and then they're done.
And I was like, let me start the bacon.
Let me get up now, and I'll start I'll start cutting the lettuce, cutting the onions, and I'm like,
they're done.
The food's done. Like, what have you been doing for 35 minutes? They're like, oh, just sunbathing.
Sunbathing with Maverick and Thomas. Yeah.
She's like, oh, I'm making bacon as topping. You want to wait for it? I'm like, no, you could have did that while I was doing all of pulling out the grill, because it stays in our RV. So I'm like pulling it out, running the gas line to it. She's just laying there, and I'm like, maybe I got to do the toppings too. I don't know.
You're a mess.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for another conversation. Hope that you enjoyed it, benefited from it. Share it with somebody.
Yeah.
Share any of the episodes. Anytime you maybe hear a great episode, just, don't forget, do a little share button, text it to somebody, post it on Instagram, something like that. The more you get the word out, the more it helps people. More people know beyond the letter and beyond I do. You know what I'm saying? So thank you. God bless. Goodbye.
Bye.